Hello everyone, today we are going to learn Chapter 1 Geographical Diversity of India Part 1 from your Social Science textbook. In this video, I'll be covering each and every line from the chapter so you don't miss anything important. Make sure to keep your notebook and pen ready and take notes while watching. This will help you remember the concepts better. You can pause or rewind any time to write things down. So, let's begin. Geographical diversity of India means that our country, India, has many different types of physical features and natural environments. When we say diversity, we mean variety or differences. In India, we don't have just one type of landform or climate. Instead, we have high mountains like the Himalayas, vast plains like the northern plains, dry deserts like the Thar Desert. And because of this geographical diversity, different parts of India have different climates and different vegetation, wildlife and ways of life. So, geographical diversity of India means the wide variety of landforms, climates and natural features found across our country. First, we have a quote by Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo was a freedom fighter and philosopher. He wrote about India's culture, history and identity and believed strongly in the unity and uniqueness of our country. To us, by its very geography, the country, India, appears to be quite distinct from other countries, and that itself gives it a certain national character. So, Sri Aurobindo is saying that just by looking at the geography of India, we can see that it is different from other countries. India has natural boundaries like the Himalayas in the north, seas on three sides and a variety of landforms inside. Because of these features, India looks like a separate and unique region on the map. This geographical uniqueness helps in forming a national character, which means a shared identity or feeling among the people of the country. So, India's physical features make it naturally distinct, and this has helped people feel that they belong to one nation. Figure 1.1, Job Falls in Karnataka. Notice the plateau and the waterfalls. The power of the waterfall is converted into electricity, that is hydroelectricity. Hydro means water, through special turbines. Job Falls is one of the highest and most famous waterfalls in India. It is located in the state of Karnataka. You can also notice that the land here is a plateau, which means a flat area at a higher level. So, when water falls from such a height, it has a lot of force or energy. The fast falling water is directed towards special machines called turbines. These turbines start rotating due to the force of the water. When turbines rotate, they help generate electricity. This type of electricity is called hydroelectricity. Hydro means water. So, hydroelectricity means electricity produced using water. So, the big questions are, what are some key geographical features of India? How does India's geographical diversity affect our lives? We will learn answers for these questions in this chapter. In 1984, Rakesh Sharma, the first Indian astronaut to go into space, spoke with the then Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi. When she asked him, how does India look from space? He replied, Sare Jahan se acha, better than the whole world. This is the title of a well-known poem of the early 20th century. We all know about Rakesh Sharma, isn't it? Rakesh Sharma was the first Indian to travel into space in 1984. During his space mission, he had a conversation with Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister of India at that time. When Indira Gandhi asked him, how does India look from space? Rakesh Sharma gave a very famous reply, Sare Jahan se acha, which means better than the entire world. This line is not just a simple answer. It comes from a famous patriotic poem written in the early 20th century. By saying this, he expressed his love and pride for India. Even though from space all countries may look similar, his answer shows that for him, India is the best because of emotional attachment and national pride. Let's explore. Look at the map of India at the end of this book. What are you able to observe? Recall your lesson on different types of landforms, that is mountains, plains and plateaus. Which landforms can you identify on the map? What do the different colors on the map mean? Hint, the legend on the map shows the heights of each area. Take the physical map of India given at the end of your textbook. The brown color on the map represents mountain regions such as the Himalayas and ranges like Hindu Kush, Karakoram, Ladakh and Zanskar and Pip Punjab. The yellow color shows plains. Here we can see the Gangetic Plain, which is a fertile region formed by rivers. Major rivers like the Ganga, Indus, Mahanadi and Godavari can also be identified here. The green color indicates plateaus such as the Deccan Plateau, Malwa Plateau and Chota Nagpur Plateau. Other important features include the Great Indian Desert and mountain ranges like the Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. And this line shows the international boundary. As you go through this chapter, remember to refer periodically to the physical map. India is the 7th largest country in the world and a part of Asia. Along with its neighbors Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka and Myanmar, it forms the region known as the Indian subcontinent. Subcontinents since it is part of the continent of Asia. Often for the purpose of discussion, we refer to 5 regions: the Great Mountain Zone, the plains of the Ganga and the Indus, the desert region, the southern peninsula and the islands. So, as you read the chapter, you should not just read the text, you should also keep looking at the physical map of India. And when you see places like the mountains, rivers or plateaus in the chapter, try to find them on the map. This helps you understand where they are located and how they are spread across India. By doing this regularly, the chapter becomes much easier to understand and you can remember the locations better in exams. India is the 7th largest country in the world and is located in the continent of Asia. India is not alone. It is surrounded by neighboring countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka and Myanmar. Together, all these countries form a region called the Indian subcontinent. It is called a subcontinent because even though it is part of Asia, it is very large and has its own unique geographical features. So, to make it easy to study, India is divided into 5 main physical regions. That is the mountain regions like the Himalayas, the northern plains formed by rivers like Ganga and Indus, and the desert region, the southern peninsula and the islands. In this chapter, we will fly over these zones, providing you with a bird's eye view of these features and offering glimpses of what things look like in close-up at some of these places. It would be difficult to go into all the details at this stage since, as you will soon see, India is large and diverse. So in this chapter, the idea is that we will take a quick tour of India as if we are flying above it. This means we will not study everything in deep detail, but we will get a general overview of the different geographical regions of India. A bird's eye view means looking at something from above. So we can understand the big picture like where mountains, plains, deserts and plateaus are located. At the same time, we will also get a few close-up examples of some places to understand them better. India is very large and diverse, so it is not possible to study every detail right now. We will learn more deeply in higher classes. The Himalayan mountain range stands as a natural barrier in the north, while the Thar Desert and the Arabian Sea mark its western limits. To the south, the Indian Ocean and to the east, the Bay of Bengal form a natural boundary. These geographical features create a separation between India and the rest of the continent and have played a crucial role in shaping India's climate, culture and history. So, India is surrounded by natural features that act like boundaries. In the north, the Himalayas stand like a huge wall. They act as a natural barrier, protecting India and separating it from other regions. In the west, the Thar Desert and the Arabian Sea form the boundary. In the south, India is surrounded by the Indian Ocean and in the east by the Bay of Bengal. All these natural features together clearly separate India from the rest of Asia. Because of this, they have greatly influenced India's climate, that is weather patterns, culture and history. Let's explore. Do you recall your lesson on latitudes and longitudes? Look at the map. Can you read approximately the latitude and longitude where India lies? So, you need to remember what you learned about latitudes and longitude. Look at the map of India and try to find its position using these lines. India lies approximately between 8° north to 37° north latitudes and 68° east to 97° east longitudes. So this helps us understand where India is located on the map. Using latitudes and longitudes, we can find India's exact location on the world map. Identify the above features on India's physical map. So now we have to identify the features that we learned in the previous paragraphs. First, look at the northern part. You can see a long brown mountain range. These are the Himalayas. They act like a natural wall protecting and separating India. Below that, northern plains of Ganga and Indus. At the western side, you will find the Thar Desert and the Arabian Sea. These form the western boundary. This triangular land area, this whole region is called the Southern Peninsula. It is surrounded by water on three sides. The Arabian Sea on the left, the Bay of Bengal on the right, and the Indian Ocean at the bottom. Far from the mainland, we can see group of islands. These are the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And here we can see some group of small dots. These are the Lakshadweep Islands. Let us now journey together from the Himalayas to the islands in the Indian Ocean and onward to the east of India. The diverse colors on the map already give us a sense of the geographical diversity. Familiarize yourself with the legend on the map. The different colors indicate the altitudes. Now we are going to travel across the map of India, not physically but through our understanding. We will start from the north, from the Himalayas, then move down across different regions, then reach the islands in the Indian Ocean, and then continue towards the eastern side of India. As you look at the map, you can already notice different colors. These colors are very important. They help us understand India's geographical diversity, meaning the variety of landforms. The different colors on the map show altitude, that is, the height of the land. Dark colors usually are the high areas like mountains. Lighter colors show lower areas like plains. So, by just looking at the colors, we can understand whether a place is high, low, flat or elevated. The Himalayas. Look at the length of the Himalayan range on the map. It is like a massive wall. From the legend, can you guess the altitude of different points of the Himalayas? So now you need to look at the physical map of India and focus on the northern side. You can see a long stretch of mountains. This is the Himalayas. Notice how wide and continuous it is. It looks like a massive wall across the top of India. You can see different shades of brown here. These colors tell us about altitude, that is, the height of the land. Dark brown shows very high mountains and lighter brown shows lower heights. So, by looking at the colors, we can guess that different parts of Himalayas have different heights. But overall, they are very high mountains. Figure 1.2, these are satellite images of the Himalayan range. Note that the length of the range is about 2,500 km. This figure shows satellite images of the Himalayas. Satellite images means they are the pictures taken from space. We can see how long and continuous the Himalayan range is. It stretches across a very large distance, about 2,500 kilometers. This shows that the Himalayas are not just a small range, but a vast and extensive mountain system. Let's remember, the Himalayas seem to touch the sky. In fact, many of its peaks are over 8,000 meters in height and are together called the 8,000ers. This mountain range stretches across 6 countries in Asia: India, Nepal, Bhutan, China, Pakistan and Afghanistan. Can you name the highest mountain in the world? So, the Himalayas are so tall that they seem to touch the sky. In fact, many of the mountain peaks here are more than 8,000 meters high. These very high peaks are called the 8,000ers. This shows how extremely tall and important the Himalayas are. The Himalayan range is not only in India, it actually stretches across 6 countries: India, Nepal, Bhutan, China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Now, coming to the question, the highest mountain in the world is Mount Everest. Mount Everest is about 8,848.86 meters high, that is almost 9 kilometers above sea level. In the summer, the snow on the mountains melts and feeds major rivers such as the Ganga, Indus, and Brahmaputra. These rivers and their tributaries provide water for drinking, farming, and industrial use, connecting with the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Hence, the Himalayas are sometimes called the water tower of Asia. The Himalayas are also important to many cultures and belief systems. The mountains themselves are considered sacred, and temples and monasteries have been built within them, attracting monks and spiritual seekers from around the world who come to pray and meditate. So the Himalayas are not just high mountains, they are also very important for life. During summer, the snow on these mountains melts. This melted water flows down and forms major rivers like the Ganga, Indus, and Brahmaputra. These rivers, along with their smaller branches called tributaries, provide water for drinking, farming, and industries. Because of this, they support the lives of millions of people. That is why the Himalayas are called the water tower of Asia, because they supply water to many important rivers. The Himalayas are also culturally and spiritually important. Many people consider these mountains sacred. You can find temples and monasteries in these regions where monks and spiritual seekers come to pray and meditate. People from different parts of the world visit these places for peace and spirituality. Don't miss out. The Bhagirathi River, a major tributary of the Ganga, originates from Gaumukh, Cow's Mouth, in Uttarakhand. It is the edge of the Gangotri Glacier. This glacier is one of the largest in the Indian Himalayas. It is considered sacred and attracts many pilgrims. Gaumukh is also a popular trekking destination. Next time you see the Ganga, remember its journey began there. So the Bhagirathi River is an important river because it is a main tributary of the Ganga. It starts from a place called Gaumukh, which means cow's mouth. This place is located in Uttarakhand. Gaumukh is actually the end point at the edge of the Gangotri Glacier, which is one of the largest glaciers in the Indian Himalayas. This place is considered very sacred. So many pilgrims visit it, and it is also a popular trekking destination for people who love adventure. So whenever you see the Ganga, remember that its journey begins from this glacier region in the Himalayas. So in this picture, you can see the mouth of the glacier, which looks like the mouth of a cow. That is why it is called Gaumukh, meaning cow's mouth. It is the edge of the Gangotri Glacier where the ice melts and water starts flowing. This place is not only geographically important but also religiously sacred. How the Himalayas were formed, an interesting story. A long time ago, India was part of a much bigger landmass called Gondwana, where its neighbor was Africa. At some point, it broke away and slowly started moving north. About 50 million years ago, it reached the landmass of Eurasia and collided with it. As India pushed against Eurasia, the land between them crumpled and rose up, just like how a carpet wrinkles when you push it. That's how the mighty Himalayan mountains were formed. So, a very long time ago, India was not where it is today. It was part of a huge landmass called Gondwana. At that time, India was actually close to Africa. Later, this landmass broke apart and India slowly started moving northwards. About 50 million years ago, India collided with another large landmass called Eurasia. When India pushed against Eurasia, the land between them got compressed and folded, just like a carpet forms wrinkles when you push it. This folding and rising of land led to the formation of the Himalayas. In this figure, we can see the movement of India over millions of years, how it traveled to reach its present position. Around 71 million years ago, India was below the equator, far in the southern part of the earth. By about 55 million years ago, it had moved closer to the equator. Around 38 million years ago, India crossed the equator and continued moving northwards. Finally, by about 10 million years ago, India reached its present position near Eurasia, which is where we see it today. This long journey explains how India collided with Eurasia and led to the formation of the Himalayas. Amazingly, India is still pushing into Asia today very slowly, about 5 centimeters each year, which is much slower than the rate at which your hair grows. This means the Himalayas are still growing taller just a tiny bit each year, about 5 millimeters. But over a millennium, that adds up to 5 meters. So it may sound surprising, but India is still moving even today. It is slowly pushing into Asia at a speed of about 5 centimeters per year. That is actually very slow, even slower than how fast your hair grows. Because of this slow movement, the Himalayas are still rising. Every year, they grow only about 5 millimeters, which is very tiny. But if you look at a long time, like 1000 years, it adds up to about 5 meters. So because India is still moving, the Himalayas are still slowly growing. This figure shows the folded layers of rocks in the Himalayas. When India collided with Eurasia, the land between them was compressed and pushed upwards. Because of this pressure, the rock layers did not stay flat. Instead, they got bent and folded just like a carpet forms folds when you push it from one side. These folds are clearly visible in the mountains, and that is why the Himalayas are called fold mountains. Don't miss out. The word Himalaya is a combination of two Sanskrit words, Hima meaning snow and Alaya meaning abode or dwelling, thus abode of snow. So, the word Himalaya comes from Sanskrit and it is made up of two words. Hima means snow and Alaya means abode or dwelling. So, when we combine them, Himalaya means abode of snow, or in simple words we can say home of snow. This name is very suitable because the Himalayas are covered with snow for most of the year, especially on the high peaks. So, Himalaya simply means the place where snow lives. The Himalayas are broadly categorized into three main ranges. The Himadri, the Greater Himalayas, are the highest and most rugged part of the range, home to towering peaks like Mount Everest and Kanchenjunga. This region remains snow-covered throughout the year. Life here is tough and there are not many human settlements. So, the Himalayas are very vast. So, to understand them better, we divide them into three main ranges. This classification helps us study their height, location, features more easily. Each range is different in terms of altitude, climate, type of land, and vegetation. The Himadri, also called the Greater Himalayas, is the highest and most rugged part of the Himalayas. This region has some of the tallest peaks in the world, such as Mount Everest and Kanchenjunga. Because of the very high altitude, this area is covered with snow throughout the year. The conditions here are extremely harsh, very cold, less oxygen and difficult terrain. So, it is not easy for the people to live here. So, there are very few human settlements here. So, remember, the Himadri is the highest, coldest and most difficult part of the Himalayas with very few people living there. The Himachal, the lower Himalayas, lie south of the Greater Himalayas and have a more moderate climate, allowing rich biodiversity and human habitation. Popular hill stations such as Nainital, Uttarakhand, Darjeeling, West Bengal, Shimla, Himachal Pradesh and Mussoorie, Uttarakhand are located in this region. So, the Himachal, also called the lower Himalayas, are located to the south of the Himadri. You can imagine it like layers. First comes Himadri and just below it is Himachal. Unlike the very cold Himadri region, the Himachal has a more moderate, that is pleasant climate. Because of this, it supports rich biodiversity, that is many plants and animals, and is also suitable for human settlement. That is why many famous hill stations are found in this region, such as Nainital, Darjeeling, Shimla, Mussoorie. These places are popular for their cool climate and natural beauty. So remember, the Himachal region has a pleasant climate, so people live there and many hill stations are located here. The Shivalik Hills, the outer Himalayas, form the outermost and lowest range consisting of rolling hills and dense forest. These foothills are rich in wildlife, serving as a transition zone between the Himalayas and the Gangetic Plains, also called the Northern Plains. So, the Shivalik Hills are the outermost and lowest range of the Himalayas. Unlike the higher ranges, these hills are made up of gentle rolling slopes and are covered with dense forest. This region is also rich in wildlife with many animals living in these forested areas. The Shivalik Hills act as a transition zone, which means they form a link between the mountains and the plains, specifically between the Himalayas and the Gangetic Plains. So, the Shivalik Hills are the lowest hills of the Himalayas, full of forest and wildlife, and they connect the mountains to the plains. Let's explore. Can you locate the names of the states in the different parts of the Himalayas? Take the help of both the physical and political maps for this exercise. Now, take your physical and political maps and try to locate the Himalayan region. Start from the northwest and slowly move towards the east. The Himalayas do not lie in just a few states, they stretch across a long distance from west to east. First, in the northwest, you will see Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Moving slightly east, we have Himachal Pradesh, then comes Uttarakhand. Further east, you will see Sikkim. And finally, in the northeast, the Himalayas extend into Arunachal Pradesh and also a small part of West Bengal, that is in Darjeeling region. Don't miss out. The traditional house construction method in the western Himalayan region is known as Katkuni or Daji Diwari style of houses. A combination of locally available stone and wood is used, which not only keeps the house warm but also resists damage in the event of mild earthquakes. So, in the western Himalayan region, people use a traditional method of building houses called Katkuni or Daji Diwari. In this method, they use locally available materials like stone and wood. These materials are easily found in the mountains, so they are practical and economical. This type of construction has two major advantages. It helps to keep the house warm, which is very important in the cold Himalayan climate. And it is also resistant to earthquakes, meaning the houses can handle mild earthquakes without much damage. So, in this picture, you can see the Katkuni house in Himachal Pradesh. Don't miss out. The Great Himalayan National Park in Himachal Pradesh has a wide diversity of flora and fauna. The park has been declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. The biodiversity of the park is being preserved by the government as well as the village communities that live inside the park. So, the Great Himalayan National Park is a very important protected area located in Himachal Pradesh. This park is known for its rich biodiversity, which means it has a wide variety of plants, that is flora, and animals, that is fauna. Because of its importance, it has been declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. This means it is recognized globally and protected for its natural value. The biodiversity of this park is not only protected by the government but also by the local village communities living inside the park. They play an important role in conserving nature. Next, we have few pictures. First one is Great Himalayan National Park Conservation Area. This is a protected area full of different plants and animals. Then Himalayan Monal male. Its colors are metallic and rainbow-like, which makes it one of the most attractive birds in the Himalayas. Third one, a monastery in Ladakh. These monasteries are places where monks live, pray and meditate. They reflect the spiritual and cultural life of the region. Then Beas River in Himachal Pradesh. Rivers like this are lifelines. They provide water for drinking, farming and daily use, and they begin from the Himalayas and support millions of people. Then snow leopard. It lives in very cold and high areas. Because it is rarely seen, it is considered special and needs protection. Then local market in the Himalayas. People sell fruits, vegetables and other goods here. Then we have rhododendron flower. It's not just a beautiful flower, people even make sharbat from it. The cold desert of India. The word desert immediately evokes an image of a hot place. However, there are also cold deserts and we have one in India. Ladakh is a cold desert where winter temperatures drop below minus 30 degrees Celsius. There is very little rainfall and the landscape is rugged with rocky terrain, deep valleys and lakes such as Pangan Tso. So means lake. The terrain here resembles that of a moon, hence it is called moonland. So when we hear the word desert, we usually think of a hot, sandy place. But that is not always true. There are also cold deserts and Ladakh is a perfect example of one in India. In Ladakh, winters are extremely cold and temperatures can go below minus 30 degrees Celsius. This region receives very little rainfall, which is why it is called a desert, even though it is cold. Land here is rugged, meaning it has rocky surfaces, deep valleys, beautiful lakes like Pangong Tso. So means lake. Because the land looks dry, rough and unusual, it is often compared to the surface of the moon and that is why Ladakh is called moonland. Figure 1.10 Pangan Tso, Ladakh. This lake has salty water unlike most other lakes. The saltiness is a result of the minerals that dissolve from the surrounding mountain areas. Pangan Tso is a very famous lake in Ladakh. What makes it special is that its water is salty unlike most lakes which have fresh water. The water is salty because it picks up minerals from the mountains and over time this makes it salty. Figure 1.9 Yaks are very important for the lives of people in the Himalayas. They are reared for their milk, meat, wool and dung and are also used for transport. So yak is a very important animal in the Himalayan region. Yaks are specially adapted to live in very cold and high altitude areas like Ladakh and other parts of the Himalayas. For the people living there, yaks are extremely useful. They give milk, they provide meat and their wool is used to make warm clothes. Even their dung is used as fuel and they are also used for transport carrying goods across difficult mountain paths. Geologists explain the formation of this terrain as we saw earlier by the fact that the mountains were folded when the Indian landmass collided with Eurasia. This folded portion was part of an ocean and so the rocks in this area are made largely of sand and clay. Wind and rain have eroded the mountains into the shapes you see in the photograph. So geologists explain how this type of land was formed. Long ago when India collided with Eurasia, the land got folded and pushed upwards, forming the Himalayas. But this folded land was once part of an ancient ocean. That is why the rocks found here are mainly made of sand and clay, which are materials usually found on the ocean floor. Over time, natural forces like wind and rain kept wearing down the mountains. This process is called erosion. And because of this erosion, the mountains have been shaped into the unique forms you see in this photograph. So remember, this land was once under the ocean, later became mountains, and then wind and rain shaped it into its present form. Despite the harsh conditions, Ladakh is home to unique wildlife like snow leopards, ibex, and Tibetan antelopes. The Ladakhi people lead a simple life. The region is known for its ancient monasteries and colorful festivals such as Losar and the Hemis festival. So even though Ladakh has very harsh conditions, extreme cold, less oxygen and very little rainfall, it is still home to some unique animals. Animals like the snow leopard, ibex and Tibetan antelope are specially adapted to survive in this tough environment. The people of Ladakh, called Ladakhis, live the simple and peaceful life adjusting to the climate and geography. The region is also famous for its ancient monasteries which show its strong spiritual and cultural traditions. Ladakh also celebrates colorful festivals like the Losar and the Hemis festival which reflect the rich culture and traditions of the people. So with this, we have completed the part 1 of the chapter Geographical Diversity of India. I hope you found it easy to understand. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. We will see you again in our next video. Bye bye.